You're listening to Speaking of Health and Wellness, the podcast, where we dive into holistic nutrition, biomedical treatments, functional medicine, low toxicant living, and developmental strategies with a special focus on children with complex picky eating, developmental delays, and neurodevelopmental disorders. I'm your host, Shandy Laskey, integrative speech-language pathologist, pediatric feeding specialist, functional nutritional therapy practitioner, and Epidemic Answers certified health coach. Together, we are changing the conversation around how we view, discuss, prevent, and treat these childhood epidemics. I am so honored to have your time and attention today. Thank you for joining me and for all of your support. Please note that this podcast is for educational purposes only and should never be misconstrued as medical advice or a replacement for individualized care from your trusted providers. Now, without any further ado, let's get started. Welcome to episode 12 of Speaking of Health and Wellness, the podcast. Today, we're going to be covering 5 nutrients for brain development and just for a healthy brain in general, not necessarily exclusive to development, but given that I work with especially young children who still are developing their brain, that is absolutely our focus here. But as you saw in the previous episode, I was covering some information on traumatic brain injuries, and so I thought that this would be a good follow-up episode to check in and provide some information that is valuable that you can use to lead your decisions in the grocery store that will in turn support a healthy brain, right? And so that's what we're going to be getting into today. So this list is not exhaustive. It is just 5 nutrients out of all the many nutrients, right? But these are 5 nutrients that I did a little write-up, and actually I have a little handout that this episode is inspired by that I'm going to link in the show notes below, called Nutrients for a Healthy Brain Guide. And it's a 1-page handout, and it covers basically the recap of all the information that I'm going to be covering today in this audio podcast. But if you want that free guide, you can go to speakingofhealthandwellness.com/freebies. And right there is the Nutrients for a Healthy Brain Guide. At the time of publishing this episode, it is there along with the Nourishing Picky Eaters Guide. But I'm also going to, like I said, link it just right below in the show notes for this episode, so you can access it there as well at the time that this is published, and I will have it there for quite some time. So let's dive in today, shall we? So we are starting off with omega-3 fatty acids. There are 3 types of omega-3 fatty acids. There's EPA, DHA, and ALA. And omega-3 fatty acids are called essential fatty acids, EFAs. You'll see them referred to. And when something is referred to as essential in nutrition, sometimes it's like thrown around without this technical term, but generally most of the time when you see something that's essential in reference to nutrition, it means that the body does not create it on its own, so you need to obtain it from diet or supplementation. So it's essential that you get it from that outside source. So essential fatty acids are essential, and we don't create them on our own. A deficiency in omega-3 fatty acids is strongly associated with children who have neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, and childhood apraxia of speech, and other neurodevelopmental disorders across the board. Omega-3 fatty acids are found in wild-caught salmon, salmon roe, which is salmon eggs, but they call it roe, if you haven't heard that term before, oysters, clams, shrimp, cod liver oil, sardines, egg yolks, chia seeds, coconut oil, flax seeds, walnuts, and hemp seeds. There are more, I'm sure, but these are just some that I had listed as top, As you'll notice, the omega-3 content is high in seafood, in fish, and different things like that. And, I know that you might be thinking, oh my gosh, how will I ever get my kid to eat that? And whenever I talk about getting kids to eat salmon, I like to shout out Michelle Hoover of unboundwellness.com. She has a lot of really just super easy but healthy recipes that are always delicious. But she focuses on the autoimmune paleo protocol and that community. And I think that there's a time and a place for the autoimmune paleo protocol, but I think that her recipes can be so helpful for families who are transitioning to a healthier lifestyle in general. So, and especially families that I work with, many of them are transitioning to that cleaner, gluten-free, casein-free diet that we've covered extensively here on the podcast. Go back to episodes 6 through 10 if you want to learn more all about the gluten-free, casein-free diet, cleaning up the diet, food sensitivities, food intolerances, how to know if your child is experiencing negative food reactions, and as well as gut health, leaky gut, the gut-brain connection, all of that I cover pretty in depth there. But yeah, so got a little bit of off topic there for a second. Got to jump back into omega 3s, but that's where I was going with that. Michelle Hoover, I recommend her to families who are transitioning their diet because she has a lot of like practical recipes. Sometimes I find that, I don't know, have you ever bought a cookbook or you go on a website and you're like looking at the recipes thinking to yourself, these are beautiful recipes. And if it's a holiday, like, I'm so into that. But if it's just a normal Tuesday, I don't always have the time or the capacity, whether that's time or, what have you, the energy, whatever, the capacity, generally speaking, I don't always have it to make these gourmet meals, right? Like, sometimes I just need a healthy meal. How can I put it together in a way that tastes good? And I think Michelle Hoover from Unbound Wellness does a great job of that. And she specifically has some different recipes on incorporating salmon and sardines. If you haven't heard of or tried chia seed pudding yet, that would also be a good option, where you could make a overnight chia seed pudding, add in some hemp seeds or some walnuts or some raspberries, blueberries, maybe a little drizzle of maple syrup or honey or something to make it a little extra sweet if you need that to for the buy-in, whether it's a breakfast or a treat, you can be mindful about that. But that would be a good source of getting some omega-3s into your child's diet as well, or into your own diet. I also, while we're just kind of on the topic of seeds right now, when we're talking about seeds, nuts, legumes, I encourage you to look into how and why you would want to properly prepare them through sprouting and or soaking them, because nuts, seeds, and legumes, when you soak them and sprout them, you're going to get better nutrient absorption and better digestion overall. These nuts, seeds, and legumes, many of them also contain what's being more and more talked about is these anti-nutrients that are contained within the outer shell of them, that hard shell. It has, basically, it binds these molecules within it. They bind to the nutrients that we are digesting, and it they can be nutrient robbers, basically. So it's like, well, when we eat, we want to eat for nutrition. But if you're eating something that is then in turn robbing you of your own nutrients just to properly break it down and assimilate it, well, then that's, you want to think about that. You want to make sure if you're eating it, it's going to nourish you and not do something that's, not helpful. So if we're talking seeds, nuts, legumes, things of that nature that have a shell or a hull that would, basically it's meant so that if an animal eats it, it will go through the animal's digestive system and be pooped out, right? So that seed, that plant can go back into the earth and regenerate. Like, that's what it's all for. Next up, our nutrient is vitamin E. Vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant that helps protect the brain from free radicals and oxidative stress. This has been found to be helpful for children who have different neurodevelopmental conditions, and especially when it's used in conjunction with omega-3s, particularly for different motor speech disorders. So, and there's been a lot of anecdotal stories that I have seen, and there are different books written on using omega-3s and vitamin E for motor speech and different, not just motor speech, but different overall motor conditions, where when I say motor, I mean that the brain is sending motor signals to the body, whether that's the mouth, the oral motor signals from the brain to the mouth, or the gross motor signals that are the bigger movements of our body, right? Or the fine motor, like our hands. Well, our oral motor is that finest fine motor we have. So oftentimes, you can kind of sometimes see motor issues throughout the whole body, not just isolated. But anyways, what they've found is that a lot of these kiddos, when using omega-3 fatty acids in tandem with vitamin E, they're seeing good improvements with speech. And I think that that's really awesome. And I would love, love, love to see more research on that. And more like hardcore black and white evidence to support its use. But right now, it's a lot of anecdotal research. There is some research out there to support this, but like I've said in previous episodes, a lot of this research to support the work that we're talking about with neurodevelopmental disorders, it's not always black and white and explicit, right? It's not always just straight up going to say, nutrition improves, blah, 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 and here's exactly how. Here's an exact protocol for every single child. It improves every single child in this way. It's never, I don't know that it will ever be like that, because because of the way research is funded. So it's getting more and more difficult for research to be allocated to nutrition protocols, because you can't patent nutrition, right? But also because, number 2, nutrition is bio-individual. Just like we've talked about with traumatic brain injuries and everything else that we've talked about leading up to this point, when you have that person's, we've got to think about our epigenetic relationship, right? Where it's like our genes are laying down this foundation, and then your diet and lifestyle and different things that happen throughout our life, from even preconception to death, it does impact us. And So in that sense, you'll never have a study that exactly says this was the same for every child, is basically what I'm trying to say here. So what foods are we going to find vitamin E in? We can find vitamin E in almonds, sunflower seeds, hazelnuts, mango, avocado, butternut squash, and kiwi. I love the idea of using butternut squash to help get vitamin E into your child's diet, because butternut squash can be made in a variety of ways, and it's typically pretty well accepted or tolerated by kiddos who are learning to like and eat new foods, especially if you make it like a mash, or if you make it like little fries or little strips or even in a soup. These are mechanically, from an oral motor perspective, if that's something that your child struggles with, and from a sensory perspective too, you can make it mechanically into a variety of textures that you can cater to your child being more likely to accept it. Now, don't just stay to that one texture of it because it's what they are preferring, but start with what you feel will be the most successful for them, and then branch out from there with another, where you're not changing the food, but now you're just changing the texture of a food that they already like. So then if they like it or if they don't like it, that it's not the texture it's not the taste, because the taste is the same, assuming that you seasoned it similarly. But the texture is now different. So then you would wonder, okay, well now it's a different texture. So is this a texture issue that they're having? Kiwis, like I said, also have vitamin E, and they're really high in vitamin C too. They're fun because you can cut them in half. If they're really, really ripe, you can cut them in half and give your child a spoon. And if you could probably start it for them so that they see and you get it, but you can use your spoon to scoop out and make a little bowl for the kiwi. You can do it that way. But if your child struggles with any sort of sensory or texture issue, kiwi might be a little bit overwhelming because of all those seeds, right? And so if that's the case, and because it's super wet, if that's the case, you could do something like putting little food picks into it, or little toothpicks into it, and cutting it into little squares, or mixing it in with another fruit that they really like strawberries. If they're open to that, some children may not be open to that. Some children, it might be better or more likely to be accepted if you kept that separately. Sunflower seeds and hazelnuts, as I mentioned, have vitamin E. And again, just to note, the soaking, the sprouting, when we're talking about nuts and seeds. Mango and avocado, those are both really great foods where you can do so much with it. Both of them can be frozen and added into smoothies to make your smoothies a bit more creamy. Mango, I love using mango in my smoothie. It has different digestive enzymes in it. It's a good source of vitamin C. It also, as we're talking about, has vitamin E. But there's just so much you can do with mango, and I find that it really, you can enjoy mango in different ways. Now, you can also get strips of mango, dried strips of mango. That is a great replacement for things like fruit snacks or fruit by the foot, or I don't know. I don't even do they make fruit by the foot these days, you guys. You know what I'm talking about, like Gushers and different fruity type of things, like fruit leather. If your kid's really into that, you can either make homemade fruit leather if you're transitioning and cleaning up the diet and you're trying to be mindful of different food additives and artificial colors and artificial flavors and things like that, and your child's really into that, what I'm saying is that mango is often a good transition as a whole food substitution. And I say that from experience with clients, but also my boyfriend personally was a guy that when I first started dating him, he was like super into gummy worms. And it was just like a after dinner snack that he would really get into. And over time, it transitioned into healthier versions of what he was already eating. But now he loves dried mango. And I'm fine with that. But I would prefer him eating fresh mango, of course, because I don't know how much vitamin E content he's really getting or your child would really get from a dried mango. But these are just some ideas of ways that you could get vitamin E and these foods into your child's diet repertoire. I also mentioned sunflower seeds, hazelnuts, and almonds. And of course, these can all be made into butters where you can spread them on different breads or little crackers or fruits like pears or apples, different things. And our next nutrient for a healthy brain is magnesium. And this one's a common deficiency. The next the next couple are going to be magnesium is commonly deficient, not only in the children that I serve, but just across the board. A lot of people are deficient in magnesium. And the next two that we'll be talking about are zinc and iron. And these they would have been more, like in the past, they would have been found in the soil. And then when the crops grow, they grow through the soil and they get all these nutrients and the minerals from the soil. And our soils are just so depleted now from the different farming practices that have, really taken over traditional conventional agriculture, including the use of agricultural pesticides and herbicides used on this huge mass scale. It really depletes the soil of these minerals, but also the body too. I mean, I made a mistake in the way that I spoke, but glyphosate actually can create different deficiencies because of the way that the body processes it, and long story short, pulls minerals or can cause different nutrient deficiencies in minerals. But anyways, back to magnesium. Magnesium aids in over 300 enzyme reactions throughout the body. So an enzyme, basically what an enzyme is it's a chemical that creates a reaction. It's a chemical that is a catalyst for something to happen. And so what I'm saying here is magnesium is needed to make over 300 of these enzyme reactions throughout the body go the way that they're supposed to go. It's needed in detoxification, relaxation, that whole process of methylating and regenerating your body, and just overall doing what the body needs to do. We need magnesium. Magnesium can improve blood sugar, lower inflammation, and help with constipation. One of my favorite ways to recommend families boost their child's magnesium levels is actually transdermally through the skin rather than food. I will still tell you the foods in just a moment that you can incorporate to get some magnesium into your child's diet in that way, but I just wanted to mention this transdermal way through the skin that you can use as kind of a backdoor way to get it into your child's body. And actually, from what I understand and what I have learned, this is the best way that we absorb magnesium is transdermally through our skin. So you can get different magnesium sprays, magnesium lotions, but I recommend just doing a magnesium salt bath or those Epsom salt baths. That's why Epsom salts are beneficial, because of that magnesium content that's within it. And, speak with your child's provider, speak with a practitioner, look up online some dosage recommendations that would be appropriate for your child's size, and you want to go low and slow, because even though you're doing this through a bath, I want you to still think about it like supplementation, because some children, a lot of these children that I'm talking about, they're just so sensitive, and you must go low and slow with like everything that you're introducing to them that's new, whether it's food, supplements, or a product within their environment. It should always be looked at as we're introducing this into their environment. Let's watch, wait, and see if there's a reaction. So if there's a reaction or it's too much for your bath, you're going to know, because your child's stools are going to be like liquid, very loose, straight up water. If you have given too much of the magnesium bath, they might be really lethargic, kind of sleepy, really relaxed probably. And so then you would just, hold off on the magnesium baths for a week or so and let them kind of recuperate, and then go with a much lower amount, half that amount that whatever you started with. But anyways, like I said, look that up, check that out. That's a great way to get magnesium into your kiddo with this backdoor way of a bath. But for food sources, avocado, again, like I mentioned with vitamin E, so now we've got a double here. You could do avocado to get magnesium and vitamin E with avocado. Cashews, almonds, again, that was also with vitamin E. Figs, pumpkin seeds, banana, and real quality dark chocolate. You can also find magnesium in spinach, and I want to mention it here because spinach is often found in the blends of the different salad mixes that are commonly at the store. And I want to be mindful of how I say this, because I don't want people being like, you said spinach was unhealthy. I'm not saying spinach is unhealthy. Just like I'm not trying to demonize gluten and dairy when I talk about it. But specifically for the children that I see, these foods can be a cause of concern. Too much raw spinach can be a major concern for kiddos with neurodevelopmental conditions, complex picky eating, as well as people who have chronic illness, especially people who have had mold illness. And the reason is because of oxalates. Raw spinach is really, really high in oxalate content, and that is for another time, another place. But just caution, learn from my own mistake that I made long ago, where I got on my health train and I was doing spinach everything, spinach chips, spinach smoothies, just really going overboard with it. And you don't want to do that. And really, you don't want to do that with any food. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. That's the importance of variety, which is why I'm so passionate about helping complex picky eaters, because that complex picky eating is often a barrier to helping them with these other underlying comorbid health conditions that could be supported through diet and lifestyle and supplementation if they were accepting of it. So sometimes you have to just start at the complex picky eating and then move from there, right? But let's bring it back. Okay, so pumpkin seeds are a real powerhouse. I love pumpkin seeds because they're actually for magnesium, zinc, and iron, these minerals that we're talking about, pumpkin seeds have all three of those in there. Pumpkin seeds are great for kiddos for a variety of reasons, and there's like pumpkin seed protein powders that you can find. You can also sprout them, you can roast them. There are different ways that you can get pumpkin seeds into your child's diet, but I encourage you to do so. Avocado, some ways you could incorporate avocado, like I said earlier, you could cut it, put it into smoothies, whether that's frozen or not. You could make it into a guacamole, or just like not even a guacamole where you put, chopped onion and herbs and tomatoes and things like that. Some kids are not going to be into that, and I understand that. But what if you just did a smashed avocado, maybe with a little Redmond real salt in there, maybe a little Himalayan pink salt, some high quality sea salt, with some garlic powder, mixed up in there, if they're into that, if they like that. Or you could just do straight up just avocado at first, but you could put that on a cracker, you could put that on a toast, you could put that all by itself, you could let them dip a chip in it. Those are good ways to do avocado. I also like to recommend avocado pudding, where you mix avocado with carob powder or a cacao powder or a cocoa powder, whichever one your child is able to have or accept for that. There's like 1,000 different recipes for that on Pinterest these days, but that's a really good way to make it just look like a chocolate pudding, and really they're trying avocado. And bonus points if you can get them involved with it, get them more hands-on with it, where they know it's an avocado and they're involved in the process. Even better. So, yes, magnesium. That is magnesium. Cashews, again, we can make a butter there. You can do all sorts of different things there. You can bake with cashews. Now, when you got to think, like, the way that you're getting your child to consume them is going to vary in the amount that you're getting your child to consume. But these are just food-focused ways that you can increase those nutrients for a healthy brain. Let's move to zinc. Zinc is one of my absolute favorite minerals to chat about. It is a commonly deficient mineral, especially in the children with complex picky eating, especially for kiddos who have neurodevelopmental conditions. But really, again, across the board, a lot of people are deficient in zinc. Zinc helps promote attention, helps promote focus, emotional stability, clear skin, and a healthy immune system. So think about deficiencies, how that would look, right? It would be kids who are sick all the time, individuals who are sick all the time, kids with a snotty nose all the time, maybe children and individuals with different skin conditions, eczema, rashes, bumps, different things like that. The kids who have a really hard time containing their emotions, like they're very quick to fall apart, where you kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells around them all the time. And I know that sometimes toddlers are just like that, you guys. Sometimes they have a bad day. Sometimes we all have a bad day. But you know what I'm talking about. Those kids where you're just like, this feels like it's just a little bit more than it should be. Where you are just falling apart and I don't really know what's going on. Sometimes that can be related or, in combination with many other factors related to a zinc deficiency. Zinc, like I said, common in extreme picky eaters, these complex picky eaters, because it makes foods seem blah and like it distorts their sense of smell and taste. So if you don't have the correct sensory perceptions of smell and taste, think about how something that maybe tastes really good, but it doesn't always feel the best. I don't know. Okay, hold on. Let me see how I can explain this. The texture isn't what we're looking for when we're eating always. Sometimes kids, drive towards certain foods based on textures, and I get that. As a feeding specialist, I get that. But if your taste perceptions are off, imagine eating a cracker that usually is a really salty, tasty, yummy cracker that just is really savory and perfect in your mouth and you love it. Think of your favorite cracker, whatever brand that is, right? Think about if you couldn't taste that cracker very well. Like, it just would be, I'm not into it. That is what I imagine these kiddos feel like. We can find zinc in foods like pumpkin seeds, cashews, chickpeas, mushrooms, grass-fed lamb, grass-fed beef, pork shoulder, chicken legs. These are going to be our main zinc sources. I love zinc in pumpkin seeds. That's a really good, like I said, you can find a pumpkin seed protein powder if your child accepts smoothies, or you can bake with that. That's a good way to do that, or those roasted pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are a great one for magnesium, zinc, and iron, and just depending on how your child is willing to accept it. But pumpkin seeds are a good one to think about adding in for sure. Chickpeas, that's a good one for zinc too, where you could get, so what I like to do, because I have a really hard time finding a hummus that doesn't have unwanted oils or natural flavors or different things that I am either sensitive to or I avoid just because just for various reasons, depending on what it is, right? So I often make my own chickpea hummus out of chickpeas, and I use the brand Jovial, and it comes in a glass jar, and I love that because they're already soaked, and they're in a glass jar, and they're organic from Europe. Some country in Europe. I want to say like Spain or Greece or Italy or something like that. But basically the reason why I bring that up is because there is a man, I believe his name is Tony Mitra. Do not hold me to it on that name, but I'm pretty certain it's Tony Mitra or something very close. This isn't on my outline. I'm just going with this one on this, but I wanted to note here that I learned from Dr. Stephanie Seneff at an Autism One conference, I believe, or maybe in an online talk she gave, but I remember it was her. She mentioned the work of a Canadian researcher by the name of Dr. Tony Mitra. He might not be a doctor, actually, now that I say this, but Tony Mitra. He did research on chickpeas and found that the chickpeas grown in North America, even the organic chickpeas, have a substantial amount of glyphosate residue, which is a agricultural herbicide that is widely used, especially on conventional crops like corn, canola, soy, other genetically modified foods. Often glyphosate containing herbicides go hand in hand with that, and glyphosate was even found in high amounts on the organic chickpeas. And you might ask, well, how is that? My assumption is that happens from cross-contamination or just because of the way that our food supply has become so contaminated. Glyphosate's even found in rainwater and breast milk samples. I mean, it's really permeated everywhere. And this isn't a glyphosate episode, but for me, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that I need to be mindful of that. And so what he was saying is that if you're going to eat chickpeas or hummus, if you can, get a European brand or a European version. And I don't know that Jovial is a European brand, but I believe that those chickpeas are from Europe. And so those are the ones I use. I pop them into my Vitamix, and that's what I use for when I make homemade pizzas. I use a chickpea and olive oil with different seasonings as my pizza sauce. So just some different ways, different thoughts. You can use it beyond hummus, Okay, last one, and that is iron. This is another common deficiency, but we need to talk about it because it's very important. Iron is found in every cell of your body. It's essential for our blood production. And again, I'm using this word essential to say we're not making it on our own. We need to get it from these outside sources. This is a mineral that is needed for our general growth and development of our brain and our body overall. We can find iron in grass-fed beef, spinach, pistachios, raisins, broccoli, again, pumpkin seeds, shout out to them. Once more on chickpeas, quinoa, cooked lentils, and blackstrap molasses. And again, these are just some foods that I put into my resource, but there are, of course, other foods where you can get these nutrients from. But shout out to grass-fed beef specifically here, as it is higher in that zinc content and iron content. And I don't think I mentioned it when we were talking about omega-3s, but actually grass-fed beef does have a really good omega-3 amount in it. And you want to be mindful, though, because a grain-fed cow is going to have, all right, so now we're getting kind of into omegas, but basically there have been studies done that show that the omega ratios 369 for cows that were fed a grain diet versus a grass-fed diet, the cows who are on the grass-fed diet have a higher omega-3 ratio and a lower 6 and 9 and a higher omega-3, and the ones that were fed grains, it was the opposite. So a higher omega-6 and a higher omega-9 and a lower omega-3. Well, that right there, those are you're kind of looking at inflammation markers in a way there. So, and we could go on a whole debate about to eat red meat or not to eat red meat. I am very pro team red meat. You probably know that by now about me. Maybe you don't. I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner. I was trained by the Nutritional Therapy Association, who is very, very focused on looking at traditional wisdom, and traditional wisdom includes traditional farming practices. So traditionally speaking, were cows always eating grains? No. So if we're saying that red meat is this humongous problem, well, is it, or is there more to the story? There's a lot more to the story. Nutrition is nuanced, you guys. I keep trying to tell you. So when you have healthy grass-fed cows and healthy animals, it's going to be a higher omega-3 content. So what I'm saying is grass-fed beef is very similar to pumpkin seeds, how it really kind of hits a lot of these different areas or these different nutrients that we've talked about today. Some different ways that you can encourage your kid to eat grass-fed beef. You can put it into a pasta like a spaghetti. You can put it into just a baking dish and do like a really lazy, quote unquote meatloaf. You know what I mean? Where you're mixing in some spices and you put it in a little glass pan and you just bake it and then you cut it into squares. Or you can roll it into little balls or little sliders. And, it doesn't always have to be like you're doing a burger and a bun or just spaghetti or whatever. You can get creative. Not that you're not, but I know that before I started my whole health and wellness journey, I just kind of repeated the same recipes that I had always grown up with. I repeated the same recipes that I had learned from different roommates that I'd picked up over the years, but I didn't really adventure outside of that. So go beyond burgers and ground beef and think about a little ball or a little slider or different ways that you can present it that may be more approachable for your child specifically based on the textures that they already eat, if they are not already eating beef, burger, and all of that. All right, my friends, thank you for listening today. Thank you for taking the time to push play and learn with me today. As I mentioned, this podcast was inspired by my Nutrients for a Healthy Brain guide. That link is in the description, in the show notes of this podcast. It's free to you. It is a one-page handout of a recap of the information I have shared with you today, except for the picky eating ways of here's how we can get this into your child's diet. That is not included on the handout, but the fast facts about the nutrients and the lists of foods that they are included in. That is all included on this one-page handout. You can look at it. You can check it out. You can download it to your phone. Use it to influence your next grocery list. Tell me how you like it. I would love to know. You can tell me in my Facebook group, my Facebook community group, which is also linked in the description below. You can also slide into my DMs on Instagram or take a screenshot of this episode and tag me in your stories. I love, love, love to do that so that I can reshare your kind words with my audience as well. Thank you again. I hope that you have a tremendous remainder of your day and a fantastic rest of your week. Take care, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to Speaking of Health and Wellness, the podcast. I'm so grateful you've taken the time. For any of the references mentioned in the show, head over to speakingofhealthandwellness.com. If this episode resonated with you or inspired you, it would mean so much to me if you took a moment to subscribe, write a review, share it on social media, or with someone in your life who could really benefit from this information. Your support helps this podcast and the overall message and mission of Speaking of Health and Wellness reach more people. If you share on Instagram, tag me so I can personally thank you for listening. If you're on Facebook, come join our free community group of like-minded parents and professionals. The direct link is in the podcast description. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again so much, and take care.